Water Union High School District. So I'll call to order and take roll.
Trustee Hall, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just needed to let Brian Peranti know that we're going live stream now, so I apologize.
Well, I guess I should start over then.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you. It's all right. All right, so it's Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021. This is the Audit and Finance Subcommittee of the Board of Trustees of Sweetwater Union High School District. We are calling this meeting to order. We'll take roll call. I'm Paula Hall. I'm the chairman of the board of this subcommittee. Mr. Segura is our, yes, thank you. My fellow trustee and our school board president. Thank you for being here, Mr. Segura. We have our superintendent, Dr. Moises Aguirre. We have Dr. Jenny Sockeld, our chief financial officer. Also helping with recording the minutes is another member of the finance division, Mrs. Carolina Zimmerman. We have Athena Quarles here, who is manager of the Propo Financial and the other property, correct, Athena?
Yes, debt
is that your title?
Manager, correct. So.
Okay. And so I will let Dr. Sockeld introduce the rest of the people on the call.
Perfect. Thank you, Trustee Hall. So we do have our audit team, our CROW team. We've got Kevin Smith, Garen McKay, and Tim Knupp. So they'll be presenting here shortly. And then we also have quite a few of our staff members here. We have from the Fiscal Services Division, as you mentioned, we've got Athena Quarles, we have Nancy Piccone. We also have from our facilities team, we've got Miss Janaea Quirk. And then we also have from our state and federal department, we have Miss Griselda Delgado. And we've got Mr. Robert Hughes from our compliance department. We have our internal audit team. We have Miss Daphne Enriquez and Mr. Gerardo Moreno. And I'm just going down the list too to make sure I didn't miss anybody. I think I may have captured. And then also we've got from our special services department, Miss Michelle Sturm Gonzalez, she'll be going over some details regarding one of our reports.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that introduction, and we appreciate it. Ms.
Hall, I didn't mean to interrupt again. I apologize, but we also have our new community member, Lisa Schmidt here this evening.
Right. Yes, we'll get to her yeah. So I'd like to welcome our new community member, which is Lisa Schmidt. Lisa, I don't see your face. Oh, there you are. How are you this evening? Welcome to our committee, and we're very thankful to have you on board as a community member for the next 2 years, which is the total of your term. So welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm
here at work, but I'm at your full attention.
All right. Thank you so much. And so Carolina, do we have any public communication?
Hi, Trustee Hall. No, we do not have any public communication this evening.
All right, thank you. So we'll move to item. Well, let's hear from you, Lisa. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and
sure,
kind of what prompted you to fill out that application and join our committee?
Well, I've been in public service for almost 30 years. I've worked at the state level in the capital, Sacramento, for about 20 years, and now going in local government for about 11 years. I currently work for a San Diego City Council member, so I'm here at City Hall. But more importantly, I'm a parent. My oldest just graduated, is about to start UC Berkeley in 2 weeks. And my youngest attends Hilltop Drive Elementary. And I've always served on the school site council and been a very involved parent. I love the public education system. I love Sweetwater High School. I love being involved. And so this is kind of a new area, but I'm really looking forward to it. I love to help out where I can.
Well, welcome aboard. You have experience with some governmental accounting, so some of the terms will be familiar to you. Some of the budget language, some of it will be a little different, but you have vested interest in being part of this committee, and I'm very thankful to have you. I know we all are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So next we will go to our audit updates. Dr. Sakel, do you want to take that?
Trustee. Thank you, Trustee Hall. So yes, we've got our CROW team here, and I'll be handing it over shortly here to Kevin Smith, who's the partner. We've been working on the 2021 audit now since May. Doing a lot of the planning, but they've already started some work with the school sites, with ASBs, with attendance. And then over the summer, we've already been pulling quite a bit of work in the month of July. We've been multitasking as we've been closing out a year, working on unaudited actuals, getting ready for the work with the auditors, and then also starting school at the same time. So we've got quite a bit going on. So we've pulled a lot of information that the CROW team has requested. And then we will continue our work from now until October, and Kevin will highlight those components of the engagement until we bring forward to this committee in early December a draft report, and then we bring it forward to our board. This is the first time in a couple of years now that we're on what I call a normal cycle of bringing forward an audit report before December 15th. So we've been working very diligently with that. So Kevin Smith will go through the engagement details of our district-wide financial, and he'll also be touching upon the Prop O financial audit, and then what's also another component of the Prop 39 performance audit related to the bond. So there's actually 3 reports that the CROW team is helping, along with the work that he's got with Garen McKay, working on the district-wide financials, and then Tim Knupp working on the bond financials. So we'll hand it over at this point to Kevin to go through the engagement details and the attachments that were provided.
Thank you. And Dr. Sakel stole what I was looking forward to sharing, is that we are on a normal cycle. So very much looking forward to that. Tim, can you share the presentation?
Yep.
So a few prepared slides, but most importantly, Chairman Hall and the rest of the trustees, we're here to answer any questions related to our overall audit plan, as well as current status. And we really appreciate the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. On slide 2, these are the items that we're prepared to speak to today. And again, like I said, any questions or discussion items that you happen to have, we're prepared to answer those as well. We'll briefly walk through the CROW Client Service Team, which is very consistent with previous years, roles and responsibilities, the scope and the deliverables that you have engaged us to perform, our planning communications and the items that we consider in planning the audit, the timeline, as well as some time at the end for any questions and discussion. So on slide 3, the team members are very consistent. Probably the only person that's listed that you're used to seeing that's not with us today is Miss Sav. She is out on maternity leave. Will be joining us again, I believe, right after Labor Day. So she will be here back for finals. She was critically involved in the planning of the engagement, as well as kind of transitioning certain items both to Tim and Garen. But we have a really quality team with deep expertise auditing California school districts, and very consistent with previous years. Each of us work for you, so happy to answer any questions today or at any point in time that you might have. On slide 3, really important to talk about roles and responsibility, and I think of it kind of as being 3 parties. Those charged with governance, which is a fancy term that the ICPA uses to really to identify you, the audit committee. You're charged with governance over the external audit and the financial statements. The two bullets that you're really responsible for is the oversight of us, as well as understanding our scope, approach, and plan timeline. And today's discussion really puts you in a position to be able to do that, as well as understanding the oversight of the reporting and integrity of the published financial information. So really it's saying that you have oversight over both CRO as well as the management team. Management is responsible for the fair presentation of the financial statements. I always joke here in a couple months when we present the financial statements, it's 100 pages of numbers, and in reality, CRO really owns 2 pages, and that's our opinion. The financial statements were prepared by management, and management owns those. They also are responsible for the design and implementation of the maintenance of the internal control structure over the fair presentation of the financial statements. Internal control can mean a variety of things. It's all really designed to mitigate bad things from happening. You have internal controls in your fleet maintenance department, amongst other things. We only focus on those internal controls over the compliance with laws and regulations that we're required to, that we'll speak to in scope, as well as those internal controls over financial reporting. So that's really what we're focused upon. Our responsibility is to perform our audit under 2 sets of standards: generally accepted auditing standards, which is promulgated by the AICPA, as well as an additional level of rigor called government auditing standards, which is published by the GAO. In its most simplistic terms, I also always like to remind those charged with governance that although we work with management, we work for you. So quite often, sometimes people can lose sight of that because we work directly with management on a daily basis, many weeks out of the year. And it can really start to feel like that we work for them. We don't, we work for you, those charged with governance. Next slide, please. As Dr. Sacheld mentioned, we're engaged to perform a couple different things, and we provide our internal audit, our independent auditors' reports on each of those. First and foremost is the basic financial statements of Sweetwater Union High School District. We then also perform an independent audit of really what is just one column within those financial statements. So it takes on a new level of rigor and materiality focused on the Propo general obligation bonds. And then we also perform a Proposition O bond program performance audit. That's designed to provide both meet minimum requirements specified by the state, as well as a few additional procedures which have been agreed to by CRO and management both as well. As a part of that, because we do perform our audit in accordance with government auditing standards, we will issue a report, not an opinion, but a report on your internal control over financial reporting and compliance and other matters. So for those who might be familiar with like a Sarbanes-Oxley report, we're not opining upon the internal controls. We are merely reporting to you what we identified as part of our audit process. So it's not an opinion, but it's a report. And we are required to report to you in writing any material weaknesses that would be identified in our audit, as well as significant deficiencies. We will also, as part of our final presentation, make what the profession refers to as required communications at the conclusion of our audit, and we will go through a litany of items related to the conduct as well as the results of our work. And then a management comment letter. So if we note any performance improvement opportunities or deficiencies that don't rise to the level of a significant deficiency, we would communicate those to management via comment letter. Next slide. So when we begin our planning, communications, and considerations, it's really important to understand that an audit, although Dr. Sacheld and the many members of her team that she introduced tonight might think that we're looking over their shoulder every day of the week for 52 weeks out of the year. We don't. We come in and we really have to do a statistical-based sample of transactions as well as understanding the internal controls of the organization. So what's really important within that is a concept of materiality in both the planning and the execution of the audits. And materiality really means that embedded within a set of financial statements, there is likely going to be errors. But a material error would change somebody's mind who is reaching a decision. So we plan our audit and execute our audit to identify any material, what we believe to be material, and materiality is both quantitative and qualitative aspects, but we really make sure that the financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and don't contain material errors. As part of that, we assess risk of material misstatement, and we really look at that in two separate ways, whether it could be caused by just sheer error or whether it could be caused by fraud embedded within the financial reporting process. If we identify fraud, whether it be through inquiry, discussion, test work, etc., our responsibility is we would report that through the chain of command, Dr. Sockeld, Dr. Aguirre, etc. However, if it involves somebody in that that level of financial reporting, we would reach out directly to those charged with governance and discuss that with you at that time. I can tell you, based upon the past several years of experience with Sweetwater Union, I don't anticipate that, but that is one of the things that the auditing standards require, is that we kind of look at everything with a clean slate each year and assess those risks based upon as if it was a fresh first year audit, etc. So again, I don't anticipate it, but we plan our audit to identify those if it were to happen. One of the other things that we're required to think about is any views of this committee that warrant particular attention. And if so, if you have particular items of interest, really it's twofold. We can discuss those at the conclusion of this presentation, or again, you can reach out directly to me and we can discuss those one-on-one. Next slide, please. Here was the good news that Dr. Sockeld has already stolen. We have concluded our planning of the engagement, and we are kind of in that process of execution, both from a testing of internal controls as well as a variety of compliance requirements at the individual school level, and then we will be performing our audit later in the fall. We do completely anticipate that we will be reporting back to management with drafts of the financial statements late November, presenting to you in early December, and then final presentation to the board and filing with the state soon thereafter. It is incredibly important to remind everybody, though, that we have a continuous commitment to audit quality, as well as the risk assessment as an ongoing basis. We believe that we will meet those targeted timelines, but if for whatever reason something would prevent us from achieving that, we will obviously communicate that to management as well as those charged with governance on a very timely basis. So it's one of those things, an audit can go really, really smooth until it doesn't. Again, I'm not anticipating that that happens, but for all of the good news we share today, we still have to complete our audit. So we believe that this timeline is achievable. Management is doing a tremendous job in responding to all of our requests. We believe it is not only feasible, but most likely that this will occur. But based upon past experience, always have to leave that caveat that things could change. Next slide, please. With that, this is our your ability to directly reach out to us via phone and or email. I'm always happy to entertain any questions, comments, concerns that you have in your role, and I will pause and answer any questions or open it up for any discussion items that the committee members would like to discuss.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So do we have any questions from the committee members? Mr. Segura or Ms. Schmidt?
I don't have any questions at this time. Trust me.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. I think it's, I'm glad that you, Ms. Schmidt, do you have any questions? No? Okay. I was going to say, I'm glad that you stated that you treated every audit, even if you've been the auditor for the past 2 years, you're treating every audit as though it was a fresh look at our, operational, the internal controls is really key for us, that we are continuing to address those in manner that really does provide that security to our district. So I really appreciate that you said that, Mr. Smith. I do. And it's good to see your team here, and congratulations to Elizabeth. It's nice to hear that she's going to be back, but I'm sure she's enjoying every minute of her maternity leave with a new one. So that's really special. So it's nice to see Mr. McKay and Mr. Knupp. Really, really good to see you again this year. And yeah, so I don't really have any questions around the engagement. I feel very good about it. And I believe if you find anything that needs a deeper dive, you will certainly be. Are you basically, you're doing basically the same, just the basic audit steps, or is there additional steps that you will be taking in the consideration of the factors that expanded audits the last 2 years?
Chairman Hall, that's a great question. The past results always have an impact upon our risk assessment. I think it's part of the reason why you continue to have a consistency within the team, as well as senior leadership that have been dedicated. We don't view Sweetwater Union. We recognize that there have been tremendous gains made within the internal control, as well as the financial reporting process within the district. But again, management is in the process of implementing a new financial system. Many internal controls continue to be manual and kind of outside of the system until the new system comes on, with all of the system limitations that we've spoken of in the past. So through, I'd say, kind of both a reduced materiality as well as a focus on those outside of the system reconciliations, it is definitely your management team goes through a very robust audit.
Okay, well, I think that's good to know, because we haven't gotten to the point where we thought we would be with the new financial system at this time. So, you know, a year ago, we were hoping, our target was to have it up and running in July of this 2021. But having said that, we understand that a lot of things have been delayed, and not because of necessarily, but partly due to the fact that we were going through a tremendous pandemic nationwide, worldwide, but also in order for us to have that system really where it should be, this additional year of time was necessary. So I understand that you are really focused on seeing that come on board and how that will operate. I think that's key. But I understand why we would need to have those extra sampling, if you will. And I know you cannot really reveal the percentage of your sampling. That's not something I'm asking. I'm just saying I understand those responsibilities on your behalf because of the type of systems we've been working with. So I thank you for that. And I really have no questions other than that. Is there anything else you wanted to offer on this?
I look forward to presenting in December. I pray that it's in person. I really look forward to seeing all of you soon. But I can also say, from a remote standpoint, again, I can't thank management enough. Audits are never easy. The audit of Sweetwater is definitely not easy, but your team just continues to respond to all of our requests. They're a pleasure to work with.
Good. That's good to hear, and I agree. They've done a tremendous job. So thank you very much, and we appreciate each and every one of your time today. So thank you. That's all I have to ask. If there's no other questions on this item, we can move forward to the next part of that agenda. Dr. Sawkill?
Yes, I think I appreciate all the work that Crow's been doing. One other note is on later this month, the Crow team will be also meeting with the CBOC to discuss the Propo audit and the related scope there as well.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. We have really been kind of winding down on Propo quite a bit, but this year we did have a significant startup project really getting the shovel in the ground on a big project, and some other ones that are finishing up, I believe. So I'm sure that we'll look forward to your report on both the financials and the performance audits for that. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
All right. Dr. Sawkill.
So the next item we have on the agenda is the other ongoing and completed audits. So it's the table that shows whether it's a program audit or if it's a fiscal related audit. I'll give Carolina a second here to pull that up, because we have a few staff members here that are joining us that will help address that. So as you can see here, this first section is the program reviews. We've got noted the strategic consultation for schools. It was around our special education program. So we have Mr. Gonzalez on here joining us to provide some background on some of the reports or some of the feedback that was received based on their analysis and things that have been put in place to help address that. So I'll hand over to Mr. Gonzalez to address this item number 1.
All right. Good evening, Chair Member Hall and Trustee Segura and committee members. Thank you very much. So Sweetwater Department of Special Services reviewed a study that was provided by Strategic Consultation for Schools, and we met collaboratively with stakeholders and other work groups in an effort to kind of prioritize the recommendations that were most relevant to meet the needs of students with disabilities within our district. The consultation group did have multiple focus areas identified, resulting in numerous recommendations, or about 95 recommendations in all. And that was as a result of visitation to the district over about a 4-day period, focusing on what they said were scopes developed by the district. Those areas were, for example, would been multi-tiered systems of support, identification of disability, staffing, litigation, fiscal, and least restrictive environments. The draft of the report was reviewed by an administration team of special services, along with a special education joint committee comprised of teachers and other faculty members. The committee collaboratively rated each one of the recommendations based on that prioritized need. And just to summarize, recommendations that the Special Education Committee and the admin team had general consensus to pursue included supports to increase monitoring of identification rates and provide professional development regarding referrals to refine assessment processes for identification, implement positive efforts to resolve due process issues at the lowest level, monitor general fund contributions to special education, reconcile spreadsheets between finance and special education on a frequent basis, and provide a variety of professional development for all educators in the areas of UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, for instructional healthcare assistants, instructional assistants, and educators. And then finally, refine assessing and fading of intensive intervention services to prepare students who receive that. It's also known sometimes as a one-to-one service, but in supporting those students for their post-secondary life to be most independent. There were also some of those recommendations that were made that the committee had a general consensus in not pursuing as initiative. And I can kind of summarize them in 2 different categories, one of which are actions that were already underway. And the district has already implemented initiatives and has committees formed working towards implementation. That includes developing an MTSS plan and for implementation, implementing a strong position control committee system, which already exists and has been functioning quite well, review existing graduation plan requirements. Due to COVID, that was already an initiative that was undertaken with multiple stakeholders as well. Follow the district special education plan, provide professional development regarding course curriculum, and work closely with the business office on contracts with non-public schools and agencies. And again, those are all areas that have already been well established and are underway. The other area that we identified as not being things that we are going to pursue were some recommendations that were not founded really in student need, but solely asked for the recommendation based on a monetary expenditure. And a couple examples of that would be reduce FTE for RSP and SDC district-wide. And let me translate that. Reduce full-time teacher allocations for a resource specialist program or a special day class district-wide. Another one mentioned reduce instructional assistance and instructional healthcare assistance for a savings of $3.6 million. And then the last one example I have here is decrease independent study program, home hospital program, and East Hills program for a savings of $360,000. None of those was really founded in terms of what need was not being met as a result of investment in such programs. I would ask if you have any questions with regards to that study. Other than what I can say is moving forward into this school year, we do have a special education task force, again comprised of stakeholders, management, teachers, classified, certificated, that are going to work on the implementation of the items that we did identify to pursue.
Thank you, Dr. Sturm-Gonzalez. Is it doctor?
No.
Oh, okay, Ms. Sturm-Gonzalez. I apologize for that. So are there any speakers on this item? I think that we already asked about it, right? So I will go to the committee. Does the committee have any questions on what Ms. Sturm-Gonzalez just went over?
Hi, Paula.
Hi.
I have a bad connection, so I've been trying to stay online here. So that was a tremendous amount of information that we just received from Ms. Gonzalez. So I kind of would need to digest all of that, or before I make any comments on it. So I just will look forward to learning more about that.
I have written up an executive summary that I'm more than happy to share.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I think that would be really worthwhile. Thank you. Who's got their hand raised? Is that Dr. Aguirre?
It's me, yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to provide a little context. For us, this has been a kind of a labor of multi years. But at the end of the day, as Ms. Sturm-Gonzalez said, our focus has been on what are those recommendations that make sense for us to support our students. And so that's what that task force has been focused on. And I think the fact that we're moving forward strategically in collaboration really makes sense to be able to support our students. Some of the recommendations were not necessarily applicable to us, or as time has happened, our circumstances have evolved, particularly with COVID. So we're definitely being strategic, and Michelle and her team are being very collaborative with our stakeholders to ensure that it's implemented with fidelity, and it also makes sense with where we're headed with the different priorities that we may have. So I just wanted to kind of share that piece, and really appreciate that Michelle has brought this this process to conclusion in terms of the report itself, and then actually to implementation as next steps. So I just wanted to say thank you to Michelle and to her team.
Yes, thank you very much, Michelle. I just was wondering about you talked about some of the recommendations that were not addressed, or you just felt the team had come to the conclusion that they were based not on student need. And I can understand where that would be, your approach and the plans that you've made are really based on student need, and some of the priorities the board has put onto staff, on Dr. Geary bringing those forward, like you said, with the multi-tiered systems of support, really, making those more, what do you call it, uniform across the district, the approaches and how they're implemented, I think is really key. So I appreciate everything that you talked about. I do look forward to that summary because I think it will answer more questions. But I don't think that, the board will continue to keep our eyes on the progress, as you know, with all of our special ed programs. I think it's so important. I did hear you talk about the recommendations, one of them being the reduction in some of those supports for particular students where it wasn't student needs based. And I kind of question how they came about making those recommendations if they weren't in fact based on student need. But yes, I think I can ask those questions through Dr. Geary, not necessarily here for this committee. So I appreciate it. Lisa Schmidt, did you have any questions for Ms. Sturm Gonzalez? I don't know if she appears to have. Anyway, I don't believe she has questions, otherwise we'd be hearing from her. So we'll move on to the next item. Thank you, Michelle. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman Hall. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. So the next item we have, Trustee Hall, and to the committee, we have an update from Ms. Delgado. Ms. Alvarez, or Dr. Alvarez, was unable to attend today, but they have led the effort with our federal program monitoring review that we coordinate with the California Department of Education. It's also a very extensive process. It's quite another very detailed audit that looks at our federal programs. And what was unique this past year was it also included the CARES Act funding sources. When we presented that information to this committee earlier in January, when the reviewers came on site a few months later, they looked into those resources as well. So she's got a presentation here that she's going to highlight a few of those points from the audit and the outcomes of that work. I think Ms. Delgado, you're on.
Hi, thank you, Jenny. Hello, everybody. Jenny, do you want me to share the presentation, or is Carolina going to do that?
I think Carolina's got that up. Is that right, Carolina?
Because I can share it too if you want.
Let me go ahead. I can pull it up. I'll be happy to.
Carolina, if you want, I can present if you're okay with that.
Yeah, Griselda, why don't you go ahead? I'm having a difficult time pulling that one up. If you don't mind, I'd appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
All right. Good evening, Chairman and Chairman Hall and the other members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to share this short but I hope informative presentation on our journey through FPM this past semester. we had our visit and or virtual visit on April 19th through the 22nd. Because of COVID, the visit was going to be in person, but all the visits were done remotely by the committee. So we took great pride in the results. So I hope that comes across at the end of the presentation. For those of you who are not familiar with federal program monitoring, it's basically a audit, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, what Steve was talking about. And the federal and state laws require every school district to implement and use categorical funding or federal funding appropriately according to all the guidelines that they supply for us. So in order to make sure that we are using these funds appropriately, they have an FPM audit and or program monitoring. So we in Sweetwater, it's my understanding we've had FPM go through every 2 years. So every 2 years we have to go through this audit, which this was my first time going through an FPM audit. And I have to say that it was a learning experience, and I so appreciate anyone who ever does audits. I so appreciate the work that they do a lot more than I did before. And so I really think it's a process of reflection, and it's a process to redefine and to readjust our systems and how we handle processes and procedures to make sure that we adhere to the regulations that come either from the federal government or the state government. So it was to say the least, it was a great learning process. Now the components, what are they reviewing pretty much? So the CDE gives us instruments, which each instrument has a theme that they focus on, and they have certain individual staff members that focus on reviewing that particular instrument. In this review, we had 10 instruments that were being reviewed by the committee, and so these are the instruments that we had to look at every single item and upload and or give them the documentation that they requested to show that we had processes and procedures in place to make sure that the particular funding is being used appropriately. If you notice, the CARES Act monitoring instrument was given to us last December, and our audit was going to be in April. At the same time, as you know, we were getting all the CARES money and the funding that we were trying to figure out and how we were going to use it with our learning continuity plan. And it was a very, I would venture to say, a stressful time, not only because of how the school sites were also trying to function virtually, but also having them use these funds appropriately, exactly how they expected us to use it. So that in itself, that instrument in itself was a very educational for all of us, because we learned as we were going through the review process that not everybody knows everything. And I think everyone, both at the state level and at the district level, everyone was doing the best they could under the circumstances. The other instruments, English learner, ed equity, adult education, supporting effective instruction. So all those instruments have that theme. So what the documents they requested, we needed to show how these funds were using to satisfy and or to target these type of requirements coming from the federal government and the state. So as you can see, it was a very, very huge task that we had to undertake as a team. But because of the team effort that our district and our school sites had, we came up understanding the review process a lot better, and also really looking at our system and our processes and asking ourselves, can we do better with this? Can we figure out a better way so it's easier for the school sites and it's easier for us? So last year, when we just received the letter in the fall that we were going to be reviewed, we created 6 teams in the district. And the 6 teams consisted of 3 school sites, which were selected at random to be audited as well. So the school sites also created their own internal teams to make sure that all the documentation that was requested was also submitted by each school site. And then at the district level, we also had internal teams that were focusing on particular instruments that were aligned to the work that each department does. So for example, one of our instruments was fiscal instrument. So of course, Dr. Salkett and her team were also part of the CARES team, which consisted not only just for finance, but also from state and federal. So there was dozens of people involved in collecting and making sure that they prepared staff for the interviews that were conducted during the visit. So, so at the end, we made a conclusion that we uploaded into the CDE system, which is called, they have a separate system to upload all these documents. We uploaded over 5,000 documents into the system. We didn't necessarily can count them, but we did an average of all the documents uploaded. So it was just a lot of documents. So overall, we had one finding. So in this finding, we definitely work with adult education to correct it, so it has been resolved. But the finding was on just the maintain of proper procedures to accurately track and record the data for who has graduated or who has gained a high school diploma and who hasn't. So as you can see, it was for the last 3 years, starting from 17-18, and not including 2021. And basically, it was just a lot of factors that contributed to this process and of collecting these number of students that received a high school diploma in the adult school. So there was also factors of new staff coming on board and doing this data collection, along with entering this data on a system that they were not familiar with. Along the same lines, on top of that, as a district, we were also transitioning from one student information system to another. And that also caused some I guess it was hard to determine who was graduating when we were having some time to create a transcript. So by the time we created the comprehensive schools, created a transcript, we had to create a transcript for adult schools as well. So that also created some errors when reporting these numbers. Nevertheless, we learned an adult school, and the director of adult school, Dr. Burke, he definitely took this in stride and created a team to make sure that they have set up appropriate processes and procedures so these miscounts don't happen again. I linked the corrective action report for you to read, and also the standing operation procedures now that are in place to make sure that the graduate tracking happens appropriately. But like I said, it was one finding, and it is corrected at this point. There was some money that needed to be paid back because of the misreporting numbers, but it was no more than $70,000. And aside from that, that's it. That's the only finding that we had. Every single other instrument had no findings. That means at the school level and at the district level. So the CDE regional leader, the leader we were working with from the CDE department, I quoted her because this quote was very significant to us because we didn't know that this was important until later on when we found out that it was very rare that a district our size has only one finding. Typically, when I asked her later on, I asked her about this comment, and she said on average, a district our size has around 5 to 7 findings, and that is good. That's actually okay because we can't, you know, we can't be perfect, right? So I said, wow, so one finding was actually very, very good, and then I understood that it was something significant. So I wanted to quote her, and I wanted to let you know that the team effort that our staff, the site staff, every department in the district demonstrated was amazing. And I think that's why we only had one finding, because of the team effort and the work that everyone did. So thank you so much. I'm open for questions. And
yes, thank you, Griselda. We
right.
appreciate it. I see our board member, our board president has his hand raised. Mr. Segura?
Yes, I just wanted to, let me take my hand down there. I just wanted to, I was thinking the same thing. That quote that was put up was like, only one finding. That's incredible for the amount of documents that were reviewed and all the 10 instruments that were all looked at, and that's just amazing. And I mean, that made me sweat just seeing that list of all the stuff that had to be gone through. And I know that you know, the one finding has been rectified and has been reported to us, and you know, things like that will happen, and glad we have that's corrected. But I truly appreciate, you know, all that work that went into that, Dr. Gary, Dr. Salcon, Mr. Delgado, and I just truly appreciate that. That is incredible amount of pride and hard work that the team at all levels, you know, accomplished to only have one finding. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Aguirre?
Thank you. I just wanted to commend Ms. Delgado, Dr. Moore, Dr. Burke for having worked very diligently on that one area. I also want to thank the board. If you may remember, we actually called a special meeting of the board to revise our policies and revise our practices. So this truly is a team effort, and we're trying to make sure that we're doing everything we can to mitigate against having any findings. Obviously, in this case, we still had one, but had we not had that special board meeting, we would have probably had more. So this is a total team effort with the board, with staff, with all of us coming together. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Aguirre. And Ms. Schmidt, do you have anything to, do you have any questions or comments?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, wonderful. No, I just want to echo the comments. And also, I'm just very impressed. I know with the CARES money, and there was just a lot of moving pieces. I know here at the city, there was a lot of findings. So just knowing that, you know, it was just relatively, just went smoothly. I just want to thank you for all you and your staff's work on this. Very impressed.
Thank you. I too echo that remark, Mr. Delgado and Dr. Aguirre and Dr. Salcon. I really do know it takes a full team across the district to get these things done. I've been through several of these myself. I know what it's like. And I know that there usually are little pieces, you know, it's fairly hard in a district this size, but some of the larger districts always, you know, to have everybody really relaying the message of what they're doing and really understanding how they're doing it, and to be able to relate that information to a team from somewhere else in the state that maybe not as familiar with our county even, let alone our district and the communities we serve. So I do commend you all for that. I do have one question about when normally there's a time period for you to respond to the finding. They give you a window of time, and then they come back and review that, and then they officially either close it or So what can you tell us the timeline for that? Is it already completed, or have they received your response and what you've done, and then they're still going to come back at some future time to respond with an acceptance of that work as being fully completing that finding? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, that's a great question, Trustee Hall. We have completed the final report, and it has been completed up to the point of confirming the receipt of payment at the state level, at the CDE. So I think Dr. Salkett was working on trying to make sure that they do receive the payment. We did have a check, and it was cut to them. So, but I think it's in the process of getting there via certified mail. Once that is done, then it'll be 100% complete.
Once it is done, will they issue a formal statement that it is closed? That's my whole question.
Okay.
Because sometimes those things, usually the invoices, a lot of times for things like this, take a while for the state to get out.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've already received it, the invoice, and it's already completed, that's just gets us closer to the point. I'm trying to make sure that when they do have a final letter to the board or to the district, that you bring that back to the committee, or that Dr. Salkeld is able to just bring it back and show it as a presentation. We don't need a whole presentation, but I do want to see it on our agenda as being an item to close out, if you understand me. I think that's what she'll do when she comes back every committee meeting with the status of our external audits, which is what we're looking at right now. Mm-hmm. She's giving updates on the external audit, so probably in that template, she can point out when they finally issue that letter of completion.
We can definitely include that, and as soon as we receive it, I will send it to her or to include in this committee meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, great work. Thank you very much. All right, Dr. Salkeld, you're back on.
Yes, thank you, Griselda. Thank you, Trustee Hall. So the next few items here, so we've gone from programs, so now these are the fiscal reviews. What we have on here is our annual physical inventory with records consultant, it's RCI. And so we've completed that work from our last cycle. We continue to look at these assets. I think, as I've shared before, this has been an area, or is an area, that even our external auditors have highlighted that we continue to improve on. There are a lot of system processes and things that we're evaluating. I'm working very closely with Athena Quarles of looking at ways for us to track those disposals and then track the transfers between, or at a school, or even between schools or different areas, and in preparation for us to migrate to the new computer system. So there is a lot of work ahead here. But they have come on board. This is now their third cycle. They've helped us every single year improve. And then we've got another item here in a little bit that we'll talk about their extension of their contract. So we're just bringing that update. They've provided a recap of their report for the work that they did. And then we'll start the next cycle around January timeframe.
Thank you.
And then the next item, I think, Carolina, is our CalPERS. So we've been working very closely with our payroll department, our human resources, and our legal department. They sent us an engagement letter to look at our pay schedules and pay rates. So we met with them. They were on campus here in June. We should anticipate, as noted here on the report, we should get something within the next few months. So they've done their sampling, they've done their field work, and now we're awaiting their final report. So once we have that, we will bring that forward to this committee as well for your reference. So it is pending.
Thank you.
The next few items here, this next one too, we just recently received an engagement, and we get these periodically from the County of San Diego Health and Human Services, where they do a review of the invoice, look at all the backup, looking at reimbursement for salaries or other items. So we just recently received that, so we're in the process of doing that work. Again, in this case too, once that work's complete, we will bring that forward to the committee. This next item actually also ties to the item that we have 2D on the agenda. For us, this is an open item because we continue to update the board and this committee on the progress for that FCMAT report that was released about a little over a year ago in June for AB 139. So we actually presented last Monday to the board a couple of items where we're at. We provided an update with some of the budget reports that we're bringing forward. Also an update, and Trustee Hall, you mentioned that earlier about our computer system. We are anticipating going live with human resources in October and then finance next summer in July. So that's one key area that part of our corrective action plan around this extraordinary audit and to help, solidify our kind of the infrastructure from the finance side of things. So this item here 6 ties to the item 2D, what was presented to the board. And again, just to wrap things up here with the CRO, we just have it noted here on our table that they completed their 1920 audit. We brought that forward to the board in September. And so that work there is kind of closing that out. Okay. So that's the table we have for our open items.
Okay, can I stop you there for a minute? Because there might be questions. I know I have a question on the County of San Diego Health and Human Services piece. Is this for the behavioral or mental health staff that we contract with the county for, or what is it referring to, this contract?
I think, yes, it's some of the services and the health providers that we have. I think, Caroline, do you have that item up that we can pull the engagement?
All right, I'm going to pull the letter right now. I'm just scrolling through so I can share the letter.
Yeah, we have several different services, but yes, in most cases it is the behavioral health work. And that
well, it does say behavioral health services. I just wondered if this is a contract for those FTE, the people that we are contracting. Some of those are being paid through this contract with the county, and so we pay them and they reimburse the district for those salaries. Okay.
Yes, and that's the level of detail they look for. Correct.
Right. They want to make sure the hours and the rates are all what they agreed to.
Yes.
And that they can confirm it. So this wouldn't be this is nothing to do with like a Medi-Cal or a Medicare reimbursement type. Those audits are different, right?
Correct. We've had those in the past, correct, but this one's just for those particular services. Yeah, very narrow focus in that regard, yes.
All right, I appreciate that. Does anyone else have questions on the item we just covered that Dr. Self just went over? I think if you have any questions around the FCMAT report and the update on our responses, I mean, that's pretty clear what's going on in that area. We've had several board meetings on it, and it's been presented a couple of times for the committee over the past year. So I think we're familiar with it. Lisa may not be as familiar, but do you have any questions, Lisa? All right. And Mr. Segura, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Southkill. So you can go on to the financial reports.
And Trustee Hall and committee members, the next few items here are referenced since our last meeting, so that way we have what's been presented to the board, second interim, third interim, to close out our 2021 year, and then most recently our adopted budget. As we progress, just as an update here, collectively with those 3 reports, we continue to make progress with the district's financial position. We have made improvement from last year to this year. Each interim cycle, we provide a certification to the County Office of Education and the California Department of Ed, and we've gone from a negative certification to qualified. In that process too, we've also restored our fund balance that had been depleted in 2017-18. So the fact that we have our 2% economic uncertainty restored is also a good positive outcome. And so with our adopted budget, what we presented back in June, we do have some set-asides in our reserves, particularly to address like declining enrollment. because we are looking at that in the out years. So that way we're taking these one-time savings in a sense from this past year and earmarking that to address the decline. One other component is we are in the process right now. So when the governor adopted the budget at the state level in June, we were in the midst of also doing our work, right? Because we have our statutory deadlines. And so what we do as an informational item with guidance from the County Office of Ed is going to be bringing up to the board here in the next week what's known as a 45-day revision. And what that does, it takes the adopted budget, what the state changes are, and what those differences are. And so we're going to be presenting that update to the board next week. That information, then there's no action taken necessarily by the board. We take that information and that will roll into then our next statutory reporting period of first interim. So the key takeaway with those 3 reports there is the district is making progress from a financial standpoint. We've also been recognized by some of our credit rating agencies. They see that progress. That in some cases they've also improved our outlook rating, not necessarily the baseline, but the outlook from negative to stable. So again, we've got a lot of agencies who are reviewing that, and we continue our efforts with the County Office of Education and with their oversight.
Thank you, Dr. Sockeld. And I do want to, I kind of skipped over it, but the work being done by the district on meeting some of the findings in that AB 139 report, really key. Tremendous amount of work has been done over the past two years, especially. And I know that you can see just in that table how many things have really been checked off and implemented. And it really is key that we're doing the good work. You all are doing the good work of making sure we stabilize the district, that we put in good guardrails for our operational sides, and that we really have expectations that those continue on. And having those funding and really having come from a huge negative to a positive balance with reserves is really just a tremendous kudos to the team. And also to the future, I know that there's a lot of uncertainties and we don't know that what all those things are, but some of those variables that we always have to really project as best we can is on the health and the health side of our variable expenses. When the medical and dental and vision things, the workers' comp and the unemployment, that was one of the good news we had in our budget, where the unemployment rate did not come out as was first being told, right? Isn't that true? It made a significant change back down before the final budget was signed by the governor. So that was a good news for us. And so it helps, but to have the future, there's a lot of work, because no matter what, with school districts and school finance, there's a lot of unknowns in the future. But for right now, I think the government in Sacramento has really helped kind of set us in a path that will make it better for all of us going down the road. And I want to thank you and Dr. Aguirre for your leadership on all of this. Is there any questions on this? Did you have a chance to kind of get your feet wet on some of these items, Lisa?
Yes, I had a wonderful briefing on Friday.
Okay.
And I was able to not feel as overwhelmed as I do today. So.
Yes. Right. I mean, there's a lot to all of this, but really don't hesitate to have questions, and don't hesitate to reach out if later on something comes to you and you want it. You can always direct that to Dr. Sockeld and Dr. Aguirre. I would, they'll make sure that your questions are answered, and if necessary, bring it back to this committee and our next meeting, because there is a lot of information to digest. And I appreciate your having been given that little boost before we met this afternoon.
Thank you. I'll have more to say at the next meeting.
Okay, great. So if there aren't any other questions on this one, we can move to the next item, which is the internal audit plan. Internal audit items, I guess is what I'm saying. Correct, Dr. Sawkill?
Correct. So then, yes, Ms. Enriquez and Mr. Moreno will go through a couple of details along with Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, good evening. This is Daphne Enriquez. Our first item is the draft internal audit work plan.
Did we lose her? Oh, no.
Sorry, I'm just waiting for it to be pulled up. So this audit work plan is a document that shows a planned activity for the Office of Internal Audit. So if we go to the next page, before going into the work plan, we thought it would be helpful to give background for how the plan is prepared, as well as on changes you'll see this year compared to prior years. In particular, in the opening paragraphs, we described how we went from an annual work plan to one that covers a 2-year period. We went on to describe more of how the work plan is developed. This is at the bottom of page 1 and continues through page 3. For example, page 2 has our objectives and considerations that were made in the development of the work plan and the procedures that were performed. Page 3 shares the results of our procedures performed to develop the plan, or in other words, the internal audit work plan. For each area, we provide the focus and the year in which we estimate the audit will be performed. Pages 3 to 5 describe audit engagements. Some of our regular areas that are usually on here are the fraud hotline, the unduplicated count, nutrition services, free and reduced meal programs, the audit of ASBs. Page 5 through 6 describes some of our non-audit services, such as those that include agreed upon procedures, those that are advisory in nature, as well as our administrative tasks. So some of our regular items on here are the review of the monthly ASB financial statements, the commercial warrant reviews. And then the bottom of this document notes that we will also conduct follow-up reviews. This usually takes place during an audit when we follow up on prior audit observations. Hopefully you've all had an opportunity to review this beforehand. Are there any questions, comments, or other feedback regarding this document?
Yeah. I'll take it from Mr. Segura. Do you have any questions on the internal audit work plan?
No, I don't. Trustee Hall.
Lisa? No?
No, I don't.
Okay. So basically, a lot of the items are both the current year and the next. So some of these, like the unduplicated count, you are having to do 2 years of audit, correct?
Yes.
You'll be doing the current, or the 2021, the 21-22 and the 22-23.
That is correct. Many of those that have both years are considered to be our regular and routine audits that we will perform every year.
So when you look at that, are you looking at the October data from 2020 and the October data from 21, like this October? Is that how you're doing that? What's
Yes.
the time frame?
Yes, that is correct. We look at the current year for eligibility.
Okay. I have to make a note. So the same thing with the time and effort reporting. Did you have success? I know there were a lot of challenges during COVID. Was there challenges? I guess I should wait until you go over the ongoing and completed. So I'll save that question.
Sure, yes, that will be addressed when we go over the ongoing and completed. We unfortunately did continue to experience challenges due to COVID, which involved some of our workload balancing within our own internal audit resources as well as with other departments. But we're working towards developing a plan to finalize some details as well as complete some of the audits that we weren't able to during site shutdowns and such.
Thank you. All right. So if there's no other questions on that, can you move to the next item?
Sure, and I'll turn the mic over to Gerardo Moreno for the ongoing and completed. You're welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Right, so this moves us into our completed and ongoing based on the audit work plan for the year ending June 30th, 2021. So let me see, I think the documents, is it up already?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So this document notes that during fiscal year 2021, our office unfortunately continued to experience challenges with completed engagements due to COVID. But despite our efforts to adjust our audit approach, our work was impacted. So we completed as much as we were able to. Most of our work was related to our non-engagement audits, which is noted below. And we continue to reassess our approach so that we can be more flexible to those unforeseen circumstances while completing as many of our objectives as possible. So part of our reassessing our approach was a consideration of changing our annual work plan to a two-year plan. So in here, there's reports that included as part of the current meeting agenda for completed engagements and for those that have action plans that have been received or were not considered necessary due to no findings. So as you can see on this column, here you see what our audits were consistent of. Some we've had completed, and you'll see it as the appendix. Some were pending, or and the note above reference why we weren't able to complete those. Let's see. I think it's a little bit below, further down. Yeah, so these are more of our non-audit services, our risk assessment, our advisory to ASBs, our ASB manual that we're in the process of continuing of updating for our next for this school year. There are some recommendations that we've been looking at that from school sites or something that the ASB manual is currently silent on, that we are conducting a draft on to include that on our updated manual. We have our ASB spend down plans, which we're going to begin looking at in the next month or so to work with school sites, as also review of commercial warrants and reviewing time certifications. So is there any other questions regarding this report?
Sorry, I was muted. Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, no, I'm sorry if this was covered, but is there a time frame for the ones that weren't completed? Is this, I know you mentioned 2-year plan, but I just was wondering when those would
Of course.
be completed.
So all audit work that was not completed from the 2021 plan will be considered as part of our planning for the next audit. So if we're looking at 21-22 year, we may include the prior year as part of our sampling.
Okay, thank you.
So is there an expectation that you will complete the audits for 2020, the one that you didn't get to complete last year? Or are you just going to roll it in and do it all in one report? out? I'm not sure that I'm clear on what you're saying.
Sure, no problem. So if we didn't complete an audit from 2021, we would, of course, like to include that in any other audits moving forward, but we always like to state during the presentation of these plans that it's developed to be flexible so that we can be responsive to unforeseen issues and events identified during the year, such as the events that occurred with COVID. It's more of an estimate of the work that we would like to complete rather than a commitment to complete all of those. But again, we do consider areas that we were not able to complete. I think these last couple of years were a little more unique and with the challenges of not being able to complete that work, but we don't want to just disregard the work that was not performed.
Okay, so Mr. Segura, you have a question?
It was asked by Lisa. That was my question.
Okay. All right. I have a couple of questions. So when you're talking, some of these items seems like they're just kind of a natural, I'm not sure why they wouldn't have been completed. If like your account reconciliations by Fiscal Services, I mean, do you think they've already, I mean, can you explain that a little bit? What were their challenges to have that information? Because I think a lot of that information is similar to what may be compiled for just the things we just talked about with our external auditors, right? And even the compliance auditors and the FICMAT report. So are some of those items that you have listed coming out of Fiscal Services? What are the challenges there?
With COVID, with other audits that are going on with external sources, there's always a challenge of that workload balancing and competing priorities. So with developing our plan or changing it from an annual to a 2-year, we would like to work more closely with other departments in balancing that type of work so that we can schedule our audits across different periods rather than during periods that may be a little more challenging due to other work that's being completed, whether it's to internal deadlines or with our external auditors.
Right, having a common calendar, like a shared document that you all have your calendars on would be helpful probably, and people knowing what's happening when. But it seems like if there's a shared drive for you to put documents in, I mean, some of those documents should probably just like be on a routine basis so that it doesn't impact everyone in a manner that would be tough to meet those expectations. Because I think we do need to have those audits ongoing and completed in a timely manner. So I appreciate the fact that you guys were working remotely for the most part for a large part of the year, but I think we do need to make sure we're having things, especially when it comes to ensuring that we have those documentations. I think part of the reason why we were so successful in our compliance in the federal program monitoring is because a lot of that internal work of you and of Daphne and Gerardo, Mr. Moreno and Ms. Enriquez has really helped support making sure our district is keeping those things on board. So I would hope that we have a clear path for that they will be sharing those in a timely manner.
Absolutely. And if I may add, if I may add that during 2021, after the challenges that we initially experienced with COVID, that we reassessed our communication and interaction practices. And as a result of that, we did implement a SharePoint drive, which is a secure data transfer system, so that departments could upload information. So it's just a way to facilitate the sharing of information and for our department as well as others to rely more on technology to be able to perform our audits remotely.
Thank you. And I believe that it's, that's the key, that it really did provide an opportunity. Having this COVID pandemic really provided an opportunity to kind of iron out some of those virtual platforms that you can use to do the work in a streamlined way. So I'm glad to hear that. I did have a question about I'm really concerned about the instructional minutes. I think that's going to be really key this year because of some of the changes and what districts have to do with, especially around independent study and things like that. So I hope that you can get that work done. I would say it's key to where we are as a district, to making sure we have that, those functions are moving along well. But I appreciate the challenges and the workload you have, because I know it's a lot for just 2 people. And I know that our superintendent was looking at ways to enhance your abilities and to really address the staffing needs. So I know we'll be hearing from him on that in the short, or in the next few weeks. So if you want to continue. Daphne or Gerardo?
Yeah, I believe the next item is the FICMAT ASD COVID considerations.
Actually, I think it's our internal audit issued reports. It goes along with our ongoing and completed.
Yeah.
And also to mention, our prior year work plan is just included as part of the agenda for reference. If anyone needed it, we've gone over it before, but I just wanted to mention that. So these are the reports that were issued during the year. And if you refer to the ongoing and completed appendix, this is where we list all the reports that are included in this next item.
I did read through the items. Did the other committee members read through the results and the different audits that were performed by internal audit?
Paul, I have read through some of them.
Okay.
Likewise.
All right. I think we've read through your work plan and some of the audits. Did you have any questions on any of the results of their different audits? Is there anything that reached out to you that you have questions about? I had some questions, that's why I'm asking.
No, go ahead, Paula.
Okay, I mean, rather than going through every one of the reports, I think we've got them. I don't know if you feel that's value added if we do that, or if you want to just skip to the questions. I'm asking the committee.
I'm comfortable with skipping to the questions.
Okay, so some of the questions I had were, if you don't mind, I was first on the, I liked the fact that there were no findings with some of these things when you went back and reviewed what had, or you got the responses in a timely way from the school side or from the department head. I appreciated that. I appreciated the fact that you made the statements that you expressed your appreciation for the staff in Sweetwater that would help assist you throughout the process of your audits. But I did have a couple of questions. One of them was on the first one is on the expenditures having approval before checks were issued. And I know that that's not really a new item, but it sounded like some of the schools were confused over the process, right? The date that you were changing to a new, to the manual. And I really like the fact that you're going to have uniform, the forms are going to be uniform across the district. I don't really think you need to have have choices in that. That should just be, this is the following. here's what our expectation is, kind of like an administrative regulation. These are the forms that are used, and they're numbered, and you use them for this purpose, and that really avoids confusion and makes sure that people are following the processes right. So am I reading right that is in fact happening?
Yes, that is correct. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of confusion about the types of forms and the timing of when those forms should be used. There are many sites that implemented the forms as they were advised to, but for those that did not, they began using the new forms, I believe, just a few months later. There was just a misunderstanding. I think the guidance was that they used the form during the year, that the change occurred during the last half of the year, and they started, I'm sorry, there's a little bit of background noise. They started using the forms at the beginning of the last fiscal year. So most of the schools switched over July of 2020.
Yes, thank you. And I do appreciate the fact that some sites may have had staffing changes as well, which might have impacted some of that process. But they are expected to use the district form, what is form, right? It's the form that's in the manual now.
Correct.
And that's the expectation. They don't use an old form. They don't design their own form. They utilize the form that has now been adopted by in this manual, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then I noticed that there was quite a bit on fundraising versus donations, and some of the confusion that can be around when students are fundraising for trips or whatever. I think that was at Hilltop High, a lot of that. Do you know if that trip that was where some of the documentation was incorrectly identifying it, the fees as donations or the fundraising as donations, that's been taken care of. What I'm not sure about is, were these fundraising, because it's my understanding, isn't it, that they have to submit a budget plan, all these different clubs or whatever, they have to submit like their budget at the beginning so that the ASB understands what plans are. And so it's not a surprise. So all of a sudden somebody comes up with a fundraising idea and starts it. They have to get all that pre-approved beforehand. Is that correct or is that wrong?
No, that is correct. At the beginning of the year, we do ask them, and it's also stated in the ASB manual that they develop a plan. And so many of these clubs, they do provide a plan about what their goal is for their intent of their fundraising. So they do have that information filed at the school site.
And so did you see that plan filed with this trip to Italy?
Yeah, for Italy, it would, let me open up my document here for that specific. Let me open up the report there. For that, it was a confusion in regards to donation and I believe it was
If I may jump in, I just wanted to mention that as part of the club chartering process, that's when the clubs submit projected revenues or expenses, or in other words, a budget. And we did test that during our audits. We selected a sample of clubs and reviewed to ensure that they submitted the proper documents for that chartering.
So was this a club that was doing this fundraiser for an Italy trip? It wasn't a school program or like an educational.
No, it was one of the clubs, and they used the ASB. That's where they deposit the funds, right, for this activity, and then at the end of right before the activity takes place, the funds that are collected, they're used to pay to offset the expenses for that event.
And you go back and see the documentation for those expenses that are submitted?
Yes.
Okay.
We agree. Yeah, we agree. All those deposits and receipts.
All right. And the backup for any expense or checks written out to people to reimburse or whatever?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you for that. And the other question I think I had, it might not be. Yes, I don't have any other questions really on that. Does anybody else have questions on any of the reports?
I do not.
Okay. You guys have done a lot of work in spite of COVID. You've done a lot of work. And I know that it's really tough for only two of you, especially considering there's sometimes unknowns of what can happen during a year, just in the regular course of the year. So I appreciate the work you've been doing. And I see everything looks like you've gotten the responses you've needed on everything. And even on the fraud hotline, is there anything that you feel like needs our attention or you'd like to draw out to our attention on the on this last section of your item? Either of you.
I'm sorry, are we moving on to the fraud hotline item?
No, I think we've got all the items. We've read through them. What I'm trying to ask, I don't think we need to go through them. You're just going to tell us that they've been closed out, haven't they?
Right, so there were no significant findings or fraud concerns for any of the fraud hotline submissions that were made during the year. For the year, if we go to the fraud hotline report, page 2, this summarizes the reports or the complaints that we received during the year. There was a total of 4. Actually, I think it's...
Actually, the last one you have in March they were closed. What I was asking wasn't really about the internal or the fraud hotline, because it sounds like there was no significant findings.
No, none of them were fraud related or substantiated, so they were all closed.
Right.
Yeah, that's like a major concern.
So if you go to page 2 of that report, you'll see the summary.
Right, we got that, and I don't think anybody had any questions around that. What I was asking you and Gerardo, if you have anything in this whole, all of your internal audits that were performed and you completed and got reports to us on, were there anything in there that you would like to draw our attention to?
Oh, no, there's no significant matters other than those that were communicated to management, but again, those weren't significant.
Okay, and did Mr. Segura or Ms. Schmidt have any questions around the fraud hotline? I may have jumped to a conclusion on that.
I do not.
Okay.
No, I read it and reviewed it.
All right, so I think we're good with you, the internal audit section of our agenda, and I want to thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now I gotta find my agenda. Thank you. So now you want to go with us to the ASB Works?
Yes, so Trustee Hall and to the committee members, we included on this ASB Works implementation, it's an informational item, and we attached a presentation that just provides background on the software itself. We started over a year ago with 2 pilot schools. It was Southwest Middle and Olympian High School. We had received feedback from some of the ASB deans and also the ASB AP advisors that support the program there for seeking a much more robust system. And then certainly during this past year with COVID, the system that they were on was site-based, was not cloud-based. So we would have staff especially at the middle school, had to go to every middle school, issues with backing up data, things like that. So that became brought to the forefront that we needed a universal platform that we could all access. And then secondly, there are some new government accounting standards that are changing in this current year. It's GASB 84. where we have to track and report data according to those standards. And this software tracks those type of transactions. Each transaction, whether it's an expenditure or deposit, is flagged by these different criteria for this GASB 84. So what we've included in the committee's packet is just an informational item that kind of shows that administrative piece of it, of us having that oversight, and then that GASB requirement, because we are in the process of now taking it to scale to all of our schools. We're in the process of doing that work. We actually have some training tomorrow with staff in preparation for that implementation. We're closing out the books for the end of the year, getting those balances, uploading it to the new system, and then having that all be effective September 1st. So we're doing that work, and should give us a lot more robust reporting. And again, it's just that access for internal audit, for our staff here in fiscal services, that now we have oversight to that. And so the board took action back in April for the remaining licenses for the remaining schools that were outside of that pilot program. So we've received a lot of positive feedback from the two pilot schools. So now we're looking forward to taking that to scale for all of our schools. Oh, Trustee Hall, yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions on this item? I think it's really great to see that we are continuing to move to put systems and structures in place, the framework, the platforms, everything we need to really be a current, to handle our finances, to handle our systems in a current structure is really great. I thank you for that, Dr. Sockfield and Dr. Aguirre. Anyone have questions on this item? If not, we'll go to the next item, which is the asset inventory contract renewal.
And we're bringing this forward because there's been a request from the committee to, bring forward when we do have scenarios of renewing agreements. And so I mentioned earlier, like with RCI, we're in our year 3. The contract and the RFP process does allow for us to exercise the remaining 2 years, which is up to the government or the state code of 5 years. So we're wanting to bring that forward so that way, if the committee agrees, Trustee Hall would bring it back to the board, because we are looking to bring that to the last board meeting in August on the 23rd for that renewal for the remaining 2 years, so that we keep the continuity of the work that they've done thus far and working with staff, so we can continue to make those improvements. So it's a kind of request for review and then possible recommendation then for the board.
Right. So do I have any questions on that? But do you understand that this is a recommendation to, well, we would have to, I guess, vote on whether or not we would agree to recommend to our Board of Trustees. I would bring back the recommendation at our next board meeting that we extend the contract, or when they bring this item to the board, I would bring it a recommendation from the committee, if everyone agrees, that they can extend the contract. They can move forward with extending the contract. Normally, there are checks that anyone would do on a vendor. That always happens. I think that would be our one check, is that the normal background or whatever for a contract services would be done for this vendor as well before bringing it to the board. But does anyone have an objection to us as a committee recommending that they extend the contract in order to keep the continuity of this activity up for the next 2 years? Do I have any? Okay. And Lisa?
No objection.
Okay. So we'll bring that recommendation to the board when this item comes to us on our regular agenda. Thank you. So now the next is the fundraiser and expenditure list for 21-22. Do you want to give, for the public, just give a little background on what this is all about, and then we can.
Correct. So I'll have, if Carolina can pull that item up, it is something just in practice that we do bring it to this committee annually for review. We do survey I lost my screen here. We do survey the school staff for any feedback, if there are any activities. It's about fundraising and related activities. There's a section about in that area, also related expenditures as well. So we ask them, are there any items that they'd like to see on here that might be helpful going forward? We then do review it with our general counsel if there are any concerns on items that are presented for possible recommendation. And so as you can see here, because again, like I said, we bring it annually to this committee so that we then also take it to our board on an annual basis. So we're scheduled to bring this forward on August 23rd so that we can then share it with our school sites soon after that. So there's some background noise. And so right now is what's highlighted are the changes. So that's running events and silent auctions. And I think, right, Carolyn, I think it was just those two under that area that are the changes that we're bringing forward this time.
Correct. That's it. Just those two.
So let me ask you first, this is a real short list compared to what we've seen in the past. Is there a complete list? Do you have a link for that?
Yes, this is the complete. So in the packet that the committee received, and then what we've got here, yeah, Carolina scrolls down, you'll see the complete list.
Okay, that's what I was looking at.
And at the bottom of this table is where we also show, so there's the expenditure piece. We also highlight the activity of when this document has been updated right at the end. You see the history right there.
That's good. Thank you. Do I have any questions from the committee yet? Mr. Segura or Ms. Schmidt? I just want.
So.
Oh, go ahead.
Is a running event? Is that something that's just a continuing event, fundraising event, or what is a running event?
They called it like it's different. They have different names for it at the school site. I think it's just like a fundraiser running activity.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I got you.
So is it for a club or for the ASB? What kind of?
It could vary. I think depending on what it is, it could vary from club to club. And that's what this document provides them that flexibility to at least whether it's the ASB as a whole, the general ASB, or if it's a specific club.
Okay, so it's fundraising. That's what the header of all these items are, correct?
Correct.
So the silent auctions, is that being, is it somebody are they contracting with somebody to come in and do the silent auction, or is it being run by staff? I kind of have a little concern about that.
Right, they didn't give us those specific details. I would assume that because if they are contracting out, then we'd have to go through that vetting process, right? That kind of, I would assume it would be internal with the students or whoever those that are participating with the ASB or the club. It was not brought to our attention that would be an outside party. But we could certainly stipulate that if that's something the committee or the board would like for us to highlight.
Well, I guess I don't know. It sounds nice, but I'm kind of wondering how that's going to work.
Again, if they're doing a fundraiser, and I'd probably defer here to Gerardo and Daphne, again, they'd have to document that on their fundraising request form that they're submitting for the various parties to sign off, so that they'd have to note that on there. Right.
They'd have to have a plan in place well before it went through. And how that's managed will really kind of is yet to be seen, right? How it's managed by the staff or by the students or by the district coming in to review it will probably be more when the internal auditor goes about it, or when it actually happens, we'll have more information on how it works. So is there any objection by either Ms. Schmidt or President Segura to have this 2 items recommended that the board accept this revised list of fundraisers?
No objections for me.
Okay.
No objections.
All right, so that'll be it. Okay, the next item is our review of minutes. And actually, we don't have members on our committee now that were on the. Mr. Segura, you were on the committee at February.
Yes.
Okay, so we
Yes.
we are able to review the minutes. Usually, just to let you know, Lisa, we do review them and kind of approve them before they go to the board for approval, to the full board of trustees. So if we're ready to look at those, and if you have any questions, you can ask them now.
No, I read them and I make a motion to approve them for
Okay.
I'll second.
All right. So the minutes are approved. Because I assume you all are going to approve it. Maybe I shouldn't assume that. Sorry. So we'll vote.
I would say
Yes.
yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, thank you. So the next thing is our calendar of meetings for the rest of this fiscal year.
Oh, Trustee Hall, we also, before that, we have just the subcommittee charter. It's just more of a reference.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that, I did have something to say about this. I was going to say that I would like to see us bring this back to our next meeting. Perhaps Mr. Segura and I can work on bylaws for the committee, and we can rescind the charter and just adopt bylaws for the committee instead. I think that would be in line with most normal procedures with how I've seen things done before. I think we inherited the charter model, but I don't know that that's a necessary model. What does the team think about that?
Trustee Hall and Trustee Segura, I do believe we do have bylaws. I'll be happy to share those with you if you like.
Do we have, I mean, is the charter more of our mission statement then? Yeah. So maybe we do that. We frame it as a mission statement instead of a charter and bring it back, kind of restate it and see if there's anything that needs to be modified. So if you have any suggestions for modification, you can send them to Dr. Sawkill. Otherwise, we'll look at bringing it as a mission statement instead of as a charter. Does that make more sense?
So Trustee Hall, we can bring that document if there are any suggestions, and along with the board policy or the board bylaw specifically to the committee to the next meeting. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, and then,
sorry. See, the calendar of meetings is next.
and as Carolina brings that up, that's just to kind of map out the next few months. Kind of when we mentioned earlier with the auditors, we've got our meeting in December in preparation for that. But in between that, we have a meeting in October. And at that meeting as well, the auditors will provide an update of the work that they've been doing, their field work. And then we'll also have for the committee our unaudited actuals as we close out the year by September. And then we have December, like I mentioned, with the auditors. And then we've got preliminarily for March. Those meeting dates have not been determined yet for 2022, but we'll have updates there as well.
All right, thank you. Does that represent any conflicts with the committee?
No,
you
and
know,
thank you so much for accommodating me for this meeting. And I have the dates now on my
okay.
calendar.
All right. Thank you. I think the key one that would be hard to put off would be the December 6th one, because of the external auditors coming to meet with us at that time and preview the audit for this year. And if those are fine, we can move on to the next one. Thank you for doing the calendar. Mr. Segura, are you okay with it?
Yes, I put it on my calendar.
All right, thank you. So the next would be the external audits and timelines.
Right, and so we're providing this document as a resource. I think like a couple of them we touched upon today are district-wide financials, but also what Ms. Delgado highlighted with the federal program monitoring. It's some of the key audits that the district goes under in terms of oversight by different agencies. So just wanted to provide this here as a reference, such as an example, our nutrition services. The last review was done in 2018-19, and that's typically on a 5-year cycle. So it's more of a reference of what to expect in terms of the various auditing cycles.
Thank you. Yeah, when we first started off with this committee back in 2015, we established these calendars kind of as a guide for our work and for what our expectations were, and it really was grounded in ed code and legal requirements. So that's why these are helpful, I believe. And we have to give the kudos to Carolina, because she really did the work of pulling it all together for us. And I wanted to make sure we highlighted her in this work, because it looks really clean and nice, but it took a lot to get there, and she was very good about it at the time. So this is the district, or the reporting deadlines for various audits.
Right.
Go ahead.
And as I say, then the next item on the agenda is just complementary to this. It's more expansive. Yeah, this one here.
This one shows what the districts work within that time frame of the previous calendar. These are the time frames of different activities for the district to meet those deadlines with external audit, etc.
Correct. Yeah, these have all the other statutory reports that happen in the meantime within a given year. So again, we've got references, the ed code, different notes, just that way the committee has it as a resource to know what's being done throughout the year.
Thank you. That's Trustee Hall. Thank you. That's very helpful, Dr. Saltal. That is very helpful documents.
Yes, I think it really is. It helps you kind of key into the work they're doing and when they're doing it. And as you can see, there's never a downtime for the financial side of the house ever. So we really appreciate the work they do, and the tremendous efforts that they've been making the last 2.5 years has really been moving us forward as a district. So thank you all. And then the last calendar would be, well, that was the last calendar, wasn't it?
That's it.
Sorry. Yeah.
That was it.
So thank you for that. Those are good references for all of us. So right now, I just want to kind of go through what we're going to recommend. We're recommending that the Asset Inventory Consultants Records Consultant Incorporated contract is renewed for 2 years when that item comes to the board. And then we're going to recommend that the board adopt on the August 23rd board meeting the 21-22 fundraisers and expenditure list with those 2 additional types of fundraisers. Sorry, it's getting late for me. I get up early. Sorry. So now we're going to go around and ask the committee if you have any comments you'd like to make before we adjourn. Lisa, would you like to start us off?
Sure. I just want to thank you for your patience. I will be a little more prepared next meeting, but I'm just very impressed by the thoroughness and everyone's, I am learning this process, and it's very reassuring,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
in my parent hat to know there's a
Everybody
lot of
just froze up. Oh. Something just happened and everybody froze.
Oh.
I don't know what happened, but everybody froze and then it flashed out in that end. But yes, thank
a
you.
lot of checks and balances, and I'm just really looking forward to continuing, you know, participating, being a more active participant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think if there's been one thing demonstrated here, and is that we really have a great team at Sweetwater leading the charge. Very good. Internal, external auditors are doing great work, and Jenny with her team has really done a tremendous amount of work, and Dr. Aguirre has been really instrumental in different parts of our district that he will never claim credit for, but he has been a tremendous change leader in that area of bringing good structure and framework to our district. So thank you. Mr. Segura, do you have anything?
No, I just like to welcome Lisa and look forward to working with you. And thanks for everybody for all the work put into this. It was excellent.
Yes, it was. Thank you all. And with that, we're adjourned.
Bye.
Have a great